As many of you know, my name is Tony Abboud. I'm the Executive Director of the Vapor Technology Association. We are a trade association based here in the United States, representing a variety of companies in the vaping products industry. There are a lot of things I'd like to touch on in my short time today. This is a quick list of them, but I'm going to speak quickly and hope to have an opportunity to answer as many questions as possible. These are the reactions and perspectives, starting with youth, which is always where the agency starts, right? I think it's important that the director spoke about this slide, but the highlight here is really where we are with respect to the youth vaping rate. We are now at 2014 levels, which is pre-epidemic, pre-Juul, pre-mass market products, pre-disposables, pre-flavor ban, pre-T21. This is an extremely important point to recognize because of what JB was just talking about, the importance of changing the dialogue. We also have to keep an eye on the fact that youth are using combined combustible products at a 4.6% rate, which doesn't necessarily get the attention, even though there seems to be a lot of enforcement in that area. It's not talked about by the agency. So what does this mean? This means that this is the time for us, for the agency, to reverse course, to focus on adults. We are at a critical moment in time where adults need more attention from a policy perspective, from a directional perspective, than what the agency has done to date. And this was one of the calls for the Reagan-Udall Foundation. They said the agency needs to decide how it's going to balance potential future harms for youth against the actual risks that are suffered by adults who continue to smoke combustible cigarettes and other combustible products. So we agree, this is the time where the agency has to acknowledge the dramatic reduction in the youth rate. They have to abandon this youth presumption, which they have used to reject all flavored products in the marketplace, and that fatal flaw approach, which resulted in the removal of all flavored products from the marketplace. And they have to develop an objective balancing test. These are things that can be done. To date, we have no idea whether they are going to do them. I'm concerned, based upon what we've heard, that that is not happening. Second point, harm reduction must be the focus of CTP's strategic plan. It is our position that the agency must speak immediately, not in December, starting now, loudly and repeatedly, and state that tobacco harm reduction is its North Star, that vaping is dramatically safer than smoking, that vaping and model oral nicotine products are critical tools for THR and cessation. They should encourage smokers to use, if not even try, an e-cigarette if they can't quit another way. And they should authorize a wide variety of vaping products, including flavored vaping products, because we know what the science says in terms of the role that flavors play in helping people quit smoking. If this is not the foundation of the strategic plan and clearly stated as such, I fear that we are all engaging in a futile exercise at the end of the day, because the cacophony of misinformation that really only the agency right now can correct regarding this less harmful product category will undermine the strategic plan, because consumers won't believe it. So you can have some products authorized and in the market, but if consumers don't truly believe that these are harm reduction alternatives, then they have no reason to use them. Now, will this happen? Last year I said, I think I have a glimmer of hope. And I put up the quote that the director actually mentioned earlier. But frankly, that hope has faded, at least for me. And here's why. Director King talks about the continuum of risk. And he talks about it in the context of, like, of course, we believe in the continuum of risk. And he mentioned his commentary in the Journal of Addiction. But if you read the commentary carefully, which he says is the center's policy right now, he always starts and ends with this fundamental point: no tobacco product is safe, which doesn't do much to educate consumers on the issues. Again, they emphasize complete abstinence for youth, which I don't think anybody in this room believes is a recognizable or an attainable goal. And then when he gets right down to it, and he said it again today, the first line approach is always going to be FDA approved medicines. I don't quite understand what that are proven to be safe and effective. I'm not quite sure what he meant at the end when he says including FDA-approved medications and devices, unless he was suggesting that a safe and effective standard should be applied to a commercial tobacco product, which legally it cannot be. Now, he does cite Cochrane review in this report, but again, interestingly, there's this reluctance to actually said what Cochrane says. I mean, Cochrane doesn't suggest certain e-cigarettes can facilitate. They say they do. They work. And we have the best and strongest evidence yet of this fact. So when the director talks about we are going to be doing studies, that we are doing budding work in this area, we are setting the stage, we acknowledge the continuum of risk, that is not what we need. We need clear and dramatic statements from the FDA. We need a commitment to adult THR education. And yet, as he noted on his slide today, the focus remains on youth and dangers. And as it relates to his future public education campaigns for adults, I did not hear a real commitment to this. I hear we are going to study how we might speak to adults at some point in the future, if we do. And what all this tells me is that setting a foundation and developing science or how we're going to communicate is something means that we are years away from any accurate or complete education for adults. Now, CTP can, if it chooses to do so, act quickly and immediately. It has done so, the FDA has done so in the past with respect to the COVID pandemic. They acted based on short-term evidence, incomplete science. They authorized products at record speed. They rapidly set their public messaging, and they spoke immediately, loudly, and repeatedly to Americans about harm reduction. So 1 year, by the time we get the strategic plan, will have passed since the Reagan-Udall Foundation report. What we need is bold leadership on THR now, because in that year, another 480,000 of Americans have died from smoking. We don't need more bureaucratic hand-wringing. We don't need, as JB said, checking the boxes. What we need is action. And there is sufficient evidence now, and the evidence has been in all the peer-reviewed research that says that the FDA and CTP specifically can stand up and talk honestly and truthfully about tobacco harm reduction. They don't need scientists to do studies to tell them how to say and what to say. So let's talk about products getting to market, because this is an important slide that he put up. We have these pathways. What we have seen is there is one pathway gets decidedly a red light and one that gets a green light. This is a problem. It's a problem for the agency. They have authorized over 1,200 combustible products in the time that they've authorized a handful of e-cigarette products in this country. This is an unacceptable ratio. So what about e-cigarette products? Well, the refrain is that they've approved 23, which isn't saying a lot, but it's really 8 devices. And the asterisk is there because we all know a couple of those products aren't even on the market. 23 is 8/10 millionths of a percent. So if you're looking at metrics of success, I had to look this up. I had to put it into Google to figure out what that was. I mean, it's frankly just unacceptable. But we have 0 open system devices, 0 flavored e-liquids or any open system e-liquids, 0 flavored, including menthol now, which has been lumped in with everything else, and 0 nicotine pouches. I think only in government can anybody claim that this is somehow progress. So our biggest concern, though, is that even under new leadership, they just say no. We know that King came in last July, as he said, and he had the Reagan-Udall report and review thrust upon him. And he embraced the Reagan-Udall report and process itself. But what was stunning to me was that under his leadership, they initiated denials during the pendency of the Reagan-Udall Foundation review. Now, if you know you're being reviewed for your problems with your process, why would you continue to implement that process and then issue more denials? Of course, the report came out with serious criticisms of the agency with respect to its core element of its review, which is APPH. It said, you don't have clear standards on what science is required, and you don't have a clear message on how you are interpreting that. And so what did they do? They doubled down again. Even more denials, even having been told that your process is broken, you need to do something to fix it. Our position is they have to reverse course on this. Contrary to what the director was saying earlier, what is the requirements for a PMTA is simply not clear. We did not hear much, if anything, in the presentation or in public statements regarding APPH, which is of a grave concern given the fact that the Reagan-Udall Foundation made this a central criticism of the agency. It is remarkable that he notes that one day we might get there with the science, but if you don't tell industry what is actually required, you cannot solve this fundamental criticism from the Reagan-Udall Foundation. Now, let me talk a little bit about enforcement. We cannot forget why we have the enforcement dialogue that we have today. It is because the FDA leadership in 2021 effectively broke the PMTA process. They upended what the Office of Science was doing. They overrode internal decisions, resulted in the rejection of millions of products without review, and plunged the agency into litigation from virtually every company. CTP has refused to publish a list of pending PMTAs, which doesn't help industry, does not help retailers know which products may or may not be sold. And they have declared that all vaping products without MGO are illegal. Of course, CTP has publicly retreated from, but still uses enforcement discretion. So they have created nothing but mass confusion in the marketplace. So what does this mean when the agency is talking all about enforcement, right? Who does enforcement, this newfound focus on enforcement serve? I would contend the agency has been using it to basically continue to perpetuate the the youth narrative, that these products are dangerous to youth, that these products are being used by youth. Of course, even though the data does not support that. Politicians and vaping prohibitionists benefit from the efforts to remove all vaping products from the market. And a handful of companies with authorized products also benefit from that. Now, we've never wanted an unregulated market, but CTP's declaration that of illegality is, contrary to what the director was saying, a de facto ban. Right now, we effectively have that in the marketplace right now. And we all know that government cannot enforce a ban. So the question is, will the mass market removal of these products help the smokers? One could argue that FDA's failings in getting authorized products to market should not deprive adults of the various products that they are actually using today that are helping them. And the agency we don't know if they're taking account of how they're going about enforcing, but clearly they are trying to respond to the loudest voices in the room. Because we know smokers, we know what they've said. They'll go to the black market, they'll make it themselves, or they'll go back to smoking, all of which are the worst possible outcomes. So I would say this is a stark warning to remember. This was the declaration that was filed by former Director Mitch Zeller about the concerns related to the mass market exit of these products. And these kinds of warnings, I think, are as applicable today as they were back in 2020 when they were made. We need to have a rational, regulated marketplace, but the agency is no closer to getting to that when they have declared the entire product category, save a handful of products that very, very much can't be found as illegal. Now, who does this affect the most? This does affect marginalized communities. The 15 past presidents of SRNT, and I talk about this all the time because it is so important that the policy and the direction and with respect to every action the agency takes has to remember who the smokers are that need to be protected. And then recently, the study that you heard referred to earlier from the Center for Black Equity is absolutely essential in this regard, because this is a clear statement about the way in which the agency is moving forward on harm reduction, how harm reduction is essential to these marginalized communities, and how something must be done to change the trajectory. And unless we remember who all these policies and enforcement actions are directed towards, we will lose sight of the overall objective. So final, just quick concluding warnings. This is my assessment. They remain focused on youth, not on adults or marginalized populations. The agency really doesn't have any plans to speak accurately about vaping risks and benefits. And CTP is frankly on a path to eliminate vapes as a THR option or a quit option. Again, the focus on it has to be cessation is not realistic and is not giving proper credence to the importance of harm reduction in and of itself. And when we hear about all these activities and all the responses to Reagan-Udall's, I'm just reminded of one of my favorite coaches who said, never mistake or don't mistake activity for achievement. In this case, achievement means how are we helping adult smokers get past the addiction that they have and move away from a product that we know will kill them. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to having the opportunity to answer any questions.